at Johns Hopkins. There's all kinds of studies. Can you outline for people what long haul COVID means? Because every one of them has a very different thing among my friends. And again, I'm surprised I know so many people with it. Um, Talk about
Sure.
what it is. It's defined because it attacks so many parts of the body. I think is one of the issues.
Right. You know, in the spring of 2020, the very common textbook narrative was if you have a mild case of COVID-19, you will get symptoms for a couple of weeks and then get better. And it's clear that that is not the case for a large number of people. Many people don't get better. They get rolling, relentless symptoms that continue for many months after their first encounter with the virus. These symptoms might include things like extreme fatigue,
Mm-hmm.
post-exertional malaise, which means you have severe physiological crashes after even small amounts of physical and or mental activity. They might include neurological symptoms like brain fog, some
Mm-hmm.
short-term memory loss, cognitive difficulties. They might include some of the more, I think, things that are more sort of classically COVID, like fevers or shortness of breath. And there's just a very wide range of them. They affect a large number of different organ systems. They include things that you don't hear talked about a lot. Menstrual changes is a thing that befalls a lot of people in the long COVID community, and that gets very little attention.
Mm-hmm.
My sister-in-law is a long hauler. She had this weird sensation of like vibrations in her skin whenever
Yeah.
she sat down. It felt like she was sitting like on a washing machine that was going whenever she
Mm-hmm.
touched solid surfaces. There's a wide range. I think it's characterized by having a very wide range of symptoms. They go on for a long time. They typically change. Like so, it's not like you have the same things day in day out.
Mm-hmm.
One long hauler once described to me as like you've got like a grab bag of symptoms, and every week you're reaching in and pulling out like five.
Right.
Um, and as I think we will hear from Mara, some people do recover. Some of the people who I interviewed back in May and June of 2020 are better. Many of them are not fully recovered. They're not back to where they once were, but they have made improvements and they know how to manage their symptoms. And some people are still really sick.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are on day 500 plus of
Right.
recurring symptoms. And a lot of these, these are not light symptoms. They can be so debilitating. They can be so costly to people's ability to function, to work, to do all the things that many of the rest of us take for granted. I feel like if you've never experienced things, this panoply of symptoms, and to be very clear, I have not.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very difficult to imagine what it's like. One of my friends who knows this very well said that it's a bit like if you are not a long hauler, then think of like the worst day of your post-vaccine side effects or
Mm-hmm.
something equivalent, and imagine that every day.
Right.
I don't know if Mara wants to add anything to this. I recognize that I'm starting to talk about a condition that she has lived through, and maybe she wants to
No, I think I
push
think
back.
I think I think you're doing a great job, Ed. And I think another point that I would just make is we don't even really know at this point how much what is a long COVID symptom versus what is organ damage.
Right.
And I think it's also really important. Ed, your article was so great, your last one especially, and one of the reasons it was so important is just because I think you really highlighted the need to stop pretending that we've never seen anything like this before,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
because really this is very similar to a lot of other post-viral conditions, and
Absolutely.
also similar to something like Lyme disease.
Yeah, I want
Mhm.
to. There were
So
several illnesses, Mara, I was going to ask both of you what they remind me of other things where people did not take it seriously. They're just saying you're tired. or the Lyme disease was one of them. There was another one I'm blanking on.
So myalgic encephalomyelitis
Right.
or chronic fatigue syndrome
Right,
is
that's
the
it.
one that I think is most commonly compared to long COVID, and for very good reason. I talked about post-exertional malaise. That is the canonical hallmark symptom of ME, and not a symptom of the disease itself, but certainly a comorbidity is just medical dismissal. People with ME have been neglected and trivialized and mocked and gaslit by every people around them, by friends, family, and by the medical establishment for so long. And that is an experience that I think is extremely common among long haulers. Like all of the people I've spoken to have this experience of talking to doctors and nurses and being told that they were just having anxiety, or that they're making the symptoms up, or that it's all in their head, what have you. That attitude still persists today, despite growing acknowledgement of long COVID. And it's a huge part of what makes this condition so difficult. Several people have said to me that almost more than the physiological toll that long COVID takes, the act of being constantly disbelieved by people who are meant to help you is a huge part of what makes it
I
so
think
crushing.
one of the things, Mara, had you experienced the same idea that happened, that people were not paying attention to it, that they were not taking it seriously, or aren't you better yet kind of attitude that
Yeah,
people
yeah. I mean, I think that's, first of all, that's very real, especially as a young, otherwise very healthy person. I, especially early on, heard a lot from doctors like, "Oh, well, you're just not used to feeling a little off," or "Just give it time." And I think I had to be very aggressive about seeking the best treatment. But I actually have found that less and less once I have found the right team of doctors. What I actually find far more triggering at this point is what I would call the erasure of the millions of people who are and sadly will suffer, from long COVID.
Mm.
And I think when we talk about the pandemic, when you see headlines like, "Oh, it's almost over," or
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, gee, will they ever recover? Who knows? I guess we'll quote this one scientist who doesn't know anything." I find that to be almost as offensive as when you see someone not wearing a mask on the subway. So I think that actually, like the enduring trauma of the pandemic, for those of us who are living it in our bodies every day over and over, is at least for me, probably the hardest part right now.
Why do you think that is? Ed, why don't you start?
Um, I think that early narratives are very, very hard to dislodge. And I think we've seen that throughout the pandemic.